Stars. Up. Eva Bates. Jack. I do have to do Jack right there. Candy. Zayn. There. And Daniel. Okay. It would be the last one. And then for drums, it's 3. Ava, and then it's back up. Remember, T-Rex, Ava Trumpet, Candy, Zayas, Heidi, 4, 3, and then Ava Bates. Six.
Hey folks, background's 246. Exactly what we're doing. Yeah, 246, 6 soloists.
All right, here we go. One, two, 1, 2, 3,
partner. That's why I looked at the table. I'm like, why don't I have a chair? I was like, oh, I forgot I got moved.
Daniel, fifth.
Remember the repeat. Remember the repeat back to the beginning. Solos go all the way back to the beginning. All right, here we go.
I'd like to call our meeting to order and invite you to join with me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Kindig, could we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Desai? Mrs. Fryrick?
Here.
Dr. Hessen? Here. Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Sanders?
Here.
Mrs. San Martin? Here. Mrs. Schrader?
Here.
Dr. Sullivan?
Here.
Mrs. Turner?
Here.
Madam President, there are 8 present this evening and 1 absent.
Thank you. This is a reminder to please silence your cell phones during our meeting. And I wanted to bring to your attention, members of the board as well as members of the public, you'll notice that this evening's agenda has been streamlined. Administrative reports and discussion items that were previously included under various committee reports are now listed as a single agenda item and include the topic being reviewed. Additionally, action items have been consolidated under one heading for clarity. While the structure and order of the agenda have been adjusted to better align with our committee meeting of the whole format, the same topics will be covered for board review at each meeting. We will continue to assess the effectiveness of this agenda format as well as our new meeting structure and will make further refinements as needed. This brings us to our first opportunity for public comment on agenda items that are listed in red. This public comment period is an opportunity to be heard by the board on agenda items only. Comments are to be directed to the entire board, not one individual board member, administrator, staff member, or to the audience. Comments will be timed and limited to 3 minutes or less. Please note, board and staff members will not normally respond to comments or questions during the meeting. When you hear your name called, please come forward. You do not need to state your name or address before sharing your remarks. Andrew Ruth, Spring Garden Township. Hi, good evening, sir. You may need to turn the microphone.
Is that better? Yep, perfect. Thank you for the time this evening. Wanted to discuss the approval of the February 24th meeting minutes and what you just hit on there, Madam President, with the agenda. During the February 24th meeting, the board approved transitioning to a committee of the whole structure. There was some discussion around the timing and length of the meetings, potential need to move the start time forward in order to accommodate the potentially longer meetings. There was also some discussion around the fact that the public would now have less opportunity to voice their opinions and concerns to the board, and that the board and the administration would need to do a better job of highlighting what the committees and the board would be discussing in order to make sure that the public was still engaged and had full knowledge of what the board would be voting upon. After the decision to consolidate the meetings, I wanted to give the board the benefit of the doubt that the consolidation was not an attempt to limit the public's opportunity to participate in the meetings, but after reviewing the agenda prior to tonight's meeting, it is concerning to see the lack of details regarding what the board will be discussing tonight. Even more concerning is that the Property and Finance and Academic Standards and Curriculum Committees are not even on the agenda. This board even corrected Director Desai during the last meeting that the next Property and Finance Committee meeting would not be on March 17th, but would instead be on March 10th. And the Academic Standards and Curriculum Committee would seem to me to be the most pertinent committee on the agenda, as this board and this administration is in the business of educating our children. I hope that moving forward, the agendas are more robust with detailed information and the committee discussions are more thorough in order that the parents, residents, teachers, and students of this district can review and fully understand what and how this board is thinking as they are making their decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Sanders, Springettsbury Township.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
I was at the February 27th Springettsbury Board of Supervisors meeting. Richard Robinson, Alana Bortolin, and Sarah Reinecker were also there. Alana Bortolin public comments were phrased in such a way as to make people believe she has some legal authority backing up her statements. She said, "If it is legal, it is certainly unethical. It is clear conflict of interest. The appearance of a conflict of interest is extreme." Sarah Reinecker's public comments start off with her telling the board she is the chair of the Citizens for York Suburban School District. Some of what she says to the board is, "I am not giving you assumptions. I am giving you facts. I am providing information to your board. I am providing facts. These are facts." Once again, sounding like she is coming from a place of authority. Here are my questions. Are Alana Bortolin and Sarah Reinecker being sent in to represent the school board? Are they authorized to speak for the board? Any comments? Are Alana Bortolin and Sarah Reinecker being sent in to speak for the attorneys representing the board? And if so, are they being paid to do so? And if they are being paid to do so, the taxpayers should know this because we are footing the bill. I'm so happy to see that everyone has their head up and are seeing and hearing what I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the first session of public comment. That brings us to 5.0, our student board representative report. Good evening, Nicole.
Good evening. Okay. So on February 27, middle school students went Pokemon hunting to celebrate Pokemon's 29th birthday. In this activity, they were tracking handmade Pokemon cards with grammar questions on the back, and to catch a Pokemon, they had to submit the correct answer online. What a fun day for them. Congratulations also to our girls basketball team for being the PAAA District 3 5A champions. In the past week, East York Elementary held a dance party to announce this year's school book club choice. The First Rule of Punk by Celia C. Perez. Hope they had a lot of fun. What a great show. Peeping was successfully performed this February 28th and March 21st in the high school auditorium. Thanks to all the staff and students involved in this production for the great effort. Congratulations to our PAAA District 3 Swim champions. Chloe, Sarah, Paige, and Chloe Moore are all winners in the 400 free relay. Congratulations to Angela Imoroa for being the PAAA District 3 Sectional Regional Gears Wrestling champion in the 170 weight class. Congratulations also to Aliciana Yearly for earning 8th place medal at the PAAA State Gears Wrestling Tournament. Last week, Jolie Stark, one of our high school French teachers, and her students celebrated Mardi Gras Day with festive music, crepes, and games in her room. It was surely a very fun day for all the students who participated. Congratulations to Jaden Cobb for winning first place in the drawing category for her self-portrait at the Market View Arts in the annual J. Case displays, and for being one of the 20 students who received an award that day. Valley View Elementary celebrated the Red Cross Across America Week with our school board members, Mrs. Ashley Turner and Dr. Krauser, among other guests. Thanks all for sharing your time with our students at Valley View. Once again, congratulations to our girls basketball team for being the winners of the team's first PAAA playoff in 45 years. Lastly, today our softball and basketball teams played the first scrimmage of the season against York County Tech and East Pennsboro, respectively. They surely had a lot of fun. That's all I have for today. Thanks.
Thank you. It's my duty as board president to report that as permitted by Section 707 of the Sunshine Act, the board met in executive session at 6:15 p.m. on February 24th, 2025 to discuss student discipline, and at 6 p.m. on March 10th to discuss confidential student information. No official action was taken. That leads us to 7.0, administrative reports and discussion items. Dr. Krauser?
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Well, we kicked off this evening with quite a special treat. So certainly an expression of thanks to our students and the families who helped to get everyone here on time. But that was just the start of the show. I'd like to ask Mrs. Markey to come up. She's the chair of the music department, to share a little about the department and the celebration that we're doing all month. Well, we celebrate music all the time, but this month is music in our schools. She's going to highlight the group of outstanding professionals we have here, as well as our exceptional musicians. So, Mrs. Markey.
Hi, welcome.
Hello, welcome everybody. The group that you have before you is our middle school jazz band under the direction of Brandon Neese and Matt Hustler, and they are going to perform one more song for you, and then we have one more group performing a song as well, and I'll talk as they transition. So we're going to kick it off with our middle school jazz band. Thank you so much, Middle School Jazz Band. And just so you know, that was only after, I think, only 6 rehearsals that they've had since forming. So, fabulous job, students. As they transition, I just want to share a few things. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm here to share something very close to all of our hearts, and that is celebrating Music in Our Schools Month and the incredible role that music plays in our students' lives. For nearly 40 years, March has been designated as Music in Our Schools Month, and music has a lasting positive impact in our lives. The positive impact on music in the lives of our students lasts a lifetime. Therefore, the education and cultivation of music in our youngest members of society, our students, is paramount. Music is more than just notes and melodies that you hear. It's a powerful tool for learning, connection, and growth. Research consistently shows that music education improves cognitive development, language acquisition, math skills, and even emotional well-being. It builds creativity, discipline, and teamwork, skills that help students thrive in all areas of life. In all of our classrooms, we've seen students who are nonverbal light up when they play an instrument or move to music. Music gives them a voice when words can't. I see friendships form through shared rhythms, confidence grow through performances, and joy spark in their eyes when they hear their favorite songs. Music is something every student can connect to. It creates a sense of belonging. Whether it's at a school concert, a sing-along, or just drumming together in a circle, music invites everybody in. Every day in our classrooms and rehearsal rooms across our district, music educators dedicate themselves to reaching all of our students with life-changing musical experiences. Parents, administrators, and the wider community often only see the wonderful results of music performances. However, we miss the months of practice and rehearsals, and more importantly, the learning process that takes place to make it all happen. As we celebrate Music in Our Schools Month, we hope that we can continue to invest in and support music programs that enrich the lives of all of our students. Every child deserves the chance to experience the transformative power of music. Thank you all so much for believing in our students and supporting their creative growth. We now have our high school string quartet under the direction of Mrs. Ashley Thrush to finish the evening out for Music in Our Schools Month. Thank you all again so much for including music in our Schools Month, and throughout the month we will be sharing lots more information coming your way. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks, students. Thanks very much for spending the time with us this evening and sharing your talents, and families. Thank you for sharing your kiddos with us. Thank you.
And I'll just kind of echo that. Hopefully they'll get a last few minutes of this beautiful spring-like weather. Thank you to the parents who helped get everyone here on time. So that does conclude my report, but if we just have a moment to allow the students to gather their things, and then I'll be turning it over to Dr. Lorfink.
Thank you, Mr. Hustler. Thank you. Dr. Lorfink?
Okay, well, that's a hard act to follow after the beautiful music that Mrs. Markey and the rest of our staff and students brought, so thank you for that. So I come to you this evening with a couple of guests from York County Regional Police Department. It has been a long haul and a long road to get to this point tonight, but I'm excited to be here. As you all know, board and audience, I believe everybody knows that Spring Garden Police is in the process of transitioning into joining the York County Regional Police Department. June 1st, I believe, is the official date that transition is going to happen. We had been in the process, after coming to the board several times over years, that we were ready to secure an SRO, a school resource officer for York Suburban High School, as our first school with such a person in our building. And we were very excited to move forward with Spring Garden, and then found out about this transition, so it kind of slowed us down a little bit. And the other thing that's happened at the same time is just to remind the board that at the same time the state basically mandated another unfunded mandate from the state saying that we have to have some kind of security personnel in our schools, and we were heading in that direction anyway. We currently have a waiver approved through the Pennsylvania Department of Education, but we need to make sure that we get an SRO in place before that waiver would expire. So, but we were headed here anyway. So I'd like to introduce tonight from York County Regional Police Department, Chief Timothy Damon and Corporal Christopher Boyce. They're going to share a little bit about the SRO program that is already in place in several districts in the area. And hopefully we'll be ready to move into a contract with York County Regional in April. I actually have the contract already in hand, so but wanted to make sure you got some information before we started in that direction. So at this time, I have Chief Damon and Corporal Boyce.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to be here in front of you tonight to discuss and to present the school resource officer program that our department operates with 3 districts and the York County School of Technology. So we've been doing this since 2002. We were the first department in York County to have a school resource officer in Dallastown, and I remember it well because I replaced the officer that got assigned there. So it's been in our department as long as I've been there, which is 23 years. So Corporal Boyce is one of our school resource officers, and he prepared the presentation, so I'm going to turn this over to him to continue with that.
Okay, everybody hear me? Again, I'm Corporal Boyce. I'm currently in the Red Line School District as one of the SROs. They currently have 2. And I wanted to start with a little background of our department, and that the York County Regional Police Department is committed to regionalized police service as an effective and efficient means of serving our contracting municipalities and school districts. We're committed to providing community policing and problem-solving strategies through positive interactions with the public. There's a list of our municipalities. Again, it's going to be growing to include Spring Garden Township. In the school districts, we currently serve Dallastown, Red Lion, Northeastern York, and the York County School of Technology, and hopefully coming soon, York Suburban. Again, this is just another slide with the school districts that we cover. So the mission, we're a full-service primary response local law enforcement agency. Priority of the department is protect and preserve life. and property through effective enforcement of the law, commitment to the public safety, and service to our community. And I believe that integrates well into our school resource officer program that we have, again, since 2002. Members of the department shall respectfully serve all people within the community, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, or similar distinction. Following values guide department in accomplishing the vision and mission. And these are kind of the words we, as we like to say, live by: excellence, integrity, respect, and service. These are our current SROs. Sergeant Montgomery could not be here tonight. He is out of the country currently, but he is our supervisor currently, and he is at Downtown Middle School. I'm also one of the supervisors. I'm redliner at junior high and elementary schools. Officer Millette is at the School of Technology. Officer Dalkowitz, Dallas Town Senior High. Officer Sean Goodman is at Northeastern New York Senior High. Greg Bowers, he's my partner at Redline. Officer Bryce, also at Northeastern. He's at the middle and elementary schools. Officer Romolo is one of our newer SROs. He's at the Dallas Intermediate and the elementary schools. And then we have additional SROs that can fill in if one of us is out for illness, injury, training, things of that nature. Detective Zinn has been a long-time SRO. Officer Kuznowski, Officer Colton, Officer Sullivan, Officer Rupp, and Officer Terry Myers are all SRO certified. So NASRO is the National Association of School Resource Officers. To serve as an SRO, you must be certified by taking the basic SRO course, but also courses that we are available and that we like to take to expand our knowledge, and would be the advanced SRO course, School CEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. Basically, that course, I went through it last summer. We're certified to kind of inspect the schools, go around, and what we do is we bring up any issues, security issues, any kind of safety issues with the layout, lighting, doors, things of that nature. Their adolescent mental health course, SRO supervisor and management course, and then there's the annual National School Safety Conference and the annual Pennsylvania School Safety Conference. I attended the national conference last year in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was a week of just amazing case law and just knowledge of professionals throughout the country. That conference is attended by international school officers, and it's a wealth of knowledge, and it was excellent. So being a regionalized department, we do have the size that we do have resources available to us, such as Officer Goodman. Again, he's the SRO at Northeastern High School. He is a K-9 officer. He has K-9 Nova, and she is narcotics detection and tracking dog. Sweet girl. And we also have, and while he is not a school SRO, Officer Maine, he has K-9 Tango, excuse me. He's electronics detection dog, and is certified through ICAC, which is Internet Crimes Against Children. So he would be deployed for any issues, any reports that we would get of possible child pornography. Search warrant is obtained, and he can detect things as small as an SD card. I've seen him train in different environments, and it's amazing what he can find. Laptops, no problem. Cell phones, and like I said, as far as small hard drives and SD cards, it's a great great tool that we have. Okay, as mentioned, there was the Senate Bill 700 that was passed that requires armed security in the schools in Pennsylvania. We also, as officers in our department, we're all CIT trained, which is Crisis Intervention Team. And we also have a department mental health professional that we have on call that works closely with us for any mental health issues that would arise. We are all, of course, CPR, first aid, AED certified for medical emergencies. We also carry naloxone, which is a narcotic overdose response. We don't like to talk about this in society a lot, but narcotic addiction is a problem, and it can happen anywhere, including schools. So the faster that's administered, the better the effect. And us being in schools, we're here almost immediately, faster than an ambulance can get here. We provide security for large events, graduation, sporting events, football games, basketball games, etc. Dances, homecoming dances, proms. We work as security for those. Community networking and relationships, excellent. These kids, we get involved with knowing these kids, get involved with sports, club sports outside the school, and it's a really good relationship we have working at all our schools. And then if there is would be a major event, being a larger department, we do have our own full criminal investigation unit for investigation of those crimes. Okay, so as stated, she has already has the contract. Looking at the contract, which is also called a memorandum of understanding. When that's established between a police department and a school district, the SRO is considered school personnel under the umbrella of law. Okay, that does not make us school district staff, but that makes us school personnel, and also involves the in loco parentis that comes into effect when kids are in school, because we are there for the safety of everyone, the students, the staff, but most importantly the students. And FERPA still applies to patrol officers. SROs working under MRU are exempt, but we cannot release protected information just as you cannot. We have access to that because, again, we are considered school personnel, but we do not release that information that is protected. Just some daily duties. We welcome students into the school. I know I stand out front, the Red Lion Junior High. Officer Bauer stands out front, the senior high, and we welcome the students in, say good morning to them, and monitor, make sure we don't see any contraband coming in, make sure we kind of recognize all the faces coming into the school, that nobody's slipping in with the groups of students that are arriving on buses. Hallway security, again, we patrol the hallways, and a lot of times just our presence will negate a lot of issues, any fights, arguments, things of that nature. Safe to say, we assist with those. I get calls off duty all the time, and on duty, and it assists the schools in investigating those safe to says, because a lot of times some of those tips that we get have already been handled by patrol, especially evening, nighttime hours, and then I can relay that information to the schools and say, hey, we've taken care of this. This was already addressed. This is not really a school issue, so it's already been addressed. Teaching classes, guest speaking, we'll go into some of our classes, sociology classes, things of that nature, government classes, and they'll ask us to speak on topics of law and criminal procedure. We do door checks again. We're big on stop the prop. Don't keep the doors propped open. They should be secured. Do that video monitoring, making sure that the school grounds are safe. There's nobody coming and going that we don't know about. Lunch duty. That's a big time when all the kids are together and they kind of blow off some steam. And so we usually try to get into lunch duty and keep an eye on things. And then again, student dismissal. Make sure everything flows smoothly as the students are exiting, out into the parking lot and onto their buses. Again, safety of the students, teachers, staff is the primary role of the SRO. School discipline is not a duty of the SRO. We do not discipline. We do not suspend students. We do not expel students. That is administrative duty of the school. In most cases, the school officials will initiate an investigation of some type, and if they believe that it's going to rise to a criminal offense or something that they need direction with, they will refer it to us. We can take action, if we do see a criminal offense occur in our presence. We can take action for the safety of the students, staff, but most of the time we'll even, if it's something minor, I'll even take student to administrator, let them handle it, and then if they want us involved, they'll give it back to us then. And then that's all I have. Anyone have any questions?
I actually have one.
Yes.
When looking at the districts that you currently work with,
Yes.
are there any others that have, so suburban, we're 2 townships, so we will be working with you, but we also have students that live in Spring and Sperry Township. Are any of the other districts you work with split like that?
Yes.
And can you speak to how that might work a bit, since you're going to be here in Spring Garden, but we have students that attend in this building that live in Spring and Sperry, and of course buildings in Spring and Sperry?
Yes. So, the school district I work in, Redline, the schools are actually in Redline Borough, the senior high and junior high. Actually, in Redline Borough, we do not cover Redline Borough as a municipality. That is state police. The way the laws are in Pennsylvania, correct me if I'm wrong, as long as a school within that district falls into a jurisdiction, we can serve as SROs. So we cover Windsor Township in Redline. We cover Windsor Township. There are elementary schools in Windsor Township. We border the other schools, so we patrol all of the schools in that district. Same thing with Dallastown. Dallastown Intermediate School is actually in Springfield Township. Loganville Elementary is in Springfield Township. We don't cover Springfield Township, that's state police also, but we do cover Dallastown, York Township. So we cover that school district.
I'm going to expand on that a little bit. So if I understand your question, the student goes to the high school here, but they live in Spring and Sperry. And I think what you're asking is, like, how do we handle that if they live in Spring and Sperry Township?
That's part of it, but we, at some point, I'm sure we'll want to have a conversation about having an SRO at our middle school, and up until this point, Spring and Sperry is not willing to consider that with us, so I was curious if that was something we could explore with you.
So probably not, just the way the school code is written. We can cover the Red Line School District because it's covered by the state police, and there's an exemption on that. Outside of that, the middle school would be covered by Spring and Sperry. Our department does have an MOU with Spring and Sperry police department, and we work with them all the time, and we have a good relationship with them. So communication back and forth is not a problem. There are times that we have to talk to other departments because the student may live in another area, but they go to the school district. And the perfect example is York County School of Technology, which is not a district, right? So all the districts send send kids to that school. So none of them have their own district. What we call their home school. So if there's an issue at the York County School of Technology, we may have to reach out to that department where the student lives if there is an issue that sort of carries over to that. So I hope I answered your question. It is a little difficult sometimes with a jurisdiction like that.
Steve?
Thank you both for being here. Are you finding that you are working with generally the same MOU across local educational agencies, or is it varying from district to district, and in what ways typically does it vary?
I see the MOU as being basically the template that the state has. I have not seen too many of them that have varied from that because it's pretty, what do I want to say? Yeah, standardized and hey, this is the basic. I guess if you wanted to expand on it, you could, but most out of the 3 districts in York County School of Technology, I think they're all the same. It's one just template that we use.
And if I can add to that, we actually have 2 different pieces of legal paperwork that will be coming to the board regarding this. One is that memorandum of understanding. We currently have an MOU with Spring Garden and one with Spring-It's-Berry. We were going to have to redo this one anyway, but it's every 2 years we redo that MOU. So that will be coming with with York County Regional, as well as a new one for Spring-It's-Berry Township in the next couple months. And then the document I was talking about in April is actually the contract to go into services for the SRO. So there's one is a contract for services, and then one is that memorandum of understanding, which is more of a state template that we can tweak if we need to, but they're pretty standard.
So just reflecting on the fact that the literature on SROs says that about 90% of the variation in the experience that school districts will have will be input into the MOU and satisfaction with the MOU from both parties and hiring the right people. And you guys have been doing this for quite a long time, so thank you.
So I have a couple questions.
Mr. Sanders?
Yep. And thank you for being here. First off, point of clarification, Dr. Lorfink, did Spring-It's-Berry Township say they are not willing to do an SRO with you, or they just have not had a conversation with you?
I haven't had a conversation.
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
I have not had a conversation with them in about a year and a half. Okay. It's on my list to start talking that conversation again. The last time I did speak with Chief King about that,
Yep.
the answer was kind of like, well, let's start it at the high school first, and then once the board is open to an SRO again and we have a good relationship, that he would be very interested in having one at the middle school with
I just wanted to clarify that point from a question earlier. So thank you, officers, for being here. So I understand that it's Senate Bill 700 as requiring either your services or private security, armed security. Can you talk to me about how you measure your results or effectiveness when you're in a school?
Measurement of results, and I think that's a conversation that we have with the administration as well. Like, what are you seeking to accomplish? And one of those things that I have seen in seeing different administrators at different buildings is they handle things a little differently. So each school district has its own, what I call, unique personality. And so, we try to fit the right SRO with that school district so that there's not a conflict between them and sort of philosophy. The second part is we will honor what the school wants to do as long as it's not mandated by law that we have to do something. So and I'm a big proponent of this. One of the things that I really encourage the officers to do, not just the SROs, but all the officers, that if they have a juvenile that they find who is in trouble, that they should use the youth aid diversionary first before just potentially arresting a juvenile for whatever the crime is. And so we've been doing that for a long time. I find it to be successful, and the onus is on the student to correct their behavior. And I like that more than just giving them potentially a fine that's probably passed on to the parent anyway, because the student then has to have some sort of restorative justice in order to correct their behavior and make good with whatever the wrong is that they did. So I think when I look at measuring success, that's something that I like to look at, is how many kids are we diverting from the juvenile justice system and putting them into youth diversionary programs so that they can, one, understand that they're getting a second chance and that they can hopefully correct their behavior. And so another measurement of success that I think I really look forward is, do the students have a relationship with the SROs in the district? And do they come up to them? Do they talk to them? Do they have interactions with them? Do they know them by name? And that's what we're trying to build, our relationships within the schools, so that a lot of the younger generation looks at the policing profession as a career and wants to go into that profession because they had a good relationship in school with the SRO. And I think that's my measurement of success through this. So I am not we're looking at specific numbers of how we deal with students. I think I'm more of a qualitative person rather than quantitative to look at the measurement of success.
So Dr. Lorthik, are those in the MOU? Because
They're not in the contract. I haven't gotten the MOU yet. I have the contract at this point. So the MOU is more of a state template that doesn't identify those measures. I know one of the things that I'm looking at as far as a measure of success is looking at the annual report I do for the board that has the disciplinary information, looking year over year at how our disciplinary information or our disciplinary statistics have changed once we have an SRO in the building for a year, looking for decreases and especially those violent events like fights, things like that. As well as I'm curious to see how this is going to impact vaping in the schools, frankly, because that's vaping is one of those issues that is a big issue that's hard to deal with, and I'm curious to see how this impacts our vaping, whether it goes up because we're catching more, or if it goes down because of the fact that we have a police officer in the building. And if that changes at all. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. The second thing that I'm going to be looking at is school climate survey results as to get that impact on the students and more that qualitative feel for how they're feeling about having that police officer in the school.
So when the contract or the MOU, the district will be signing two documents then is
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
so we'll have a baseline of numbers that you'll provide to the board?
Yeah, I'll have that in
know
June.
In a year what's going on. And are those numbers that are going to be able to be tracked if you're doing a diversionary youth? Forgive me, I'm not familiar with the terms, but I want to make sure I'm referencing it. Youth aid diversionary, is that the correct term that you used?
Yes.
Can you track that, or is it kind of like if I'm speeding and I'm hitting 75, but you get me for going over a white line? Is it a different reportable event? Do you see what I'm getting at and what I'm asking?
Yeah, so the way that we do our records management, there is a code that we put in there that says YAP, which is Youth Diversionary, or YDP, which is Youth Diversionary Program.
Right.
And then I look at that report at the end of the year to see how many students the SROs sort of diverted out of the criminal justice system, so to speak, and kind of gave them that second chance to make good on that. So I do have statistics that we can look at. And let's just say a vape, for instance, a THC vape, right? So we have a criminal offense, that we have drugs in the school, and could we, and this is sort of that conversation we have with the district, can we divert that student to a youth diversionary program instead of a criminal charge, and see how that works. I would say at some point, if it's strike 3 for the same student, maybe we go a different route at that point. But at least we've given them the opportunity.
So when you code it in the system, you're going to be able to look at it and say, yep, that was a youth diversionary program related to vaping.
So we use two different systems. I'm not sure how they will do that, but we can correlate the same report to make sure that we have the same, so that and we have to do that annually anyway when we send in the Safe Schools report. We have to verify that the information that the school is submitting is consistent and accurate with what we have.
So in the other districts you serve, how do you report your effectiveness to those boards, or do they even care?
I'm not, so I specifically don't have that conversation with the boards. And it would go back through typically the SRO has communications with the administration has communication with the board. So I specifically don't have that. I'm not sure how the other districts handle that.
Dr. Lorfink, have you talked to the other schools that are, and I'm not singling out
Sure.
your service, but in general, how do they measure the effectiveness of an SRO? Because, to Ms. Turner's point, she's saying that we may need a second SRO, and I'd like to know what triggers that second SRO. We have 6 buildings, possibly going to 5. I don't know. I mean, I know you can be there quickly, but you're probably not going to be there to Yorkshire if you're here as quickly as a Spring and Spray cop is going to be if there's a major incident. Just logistically, that's the way that's probably, there's a possibility of working out. So what I'm looking for is, how do we measure the effectiveness of bringing these folks in? And if they are effective, how do we multiply it? What's the trigger?
Correct. So, like I said, I'm going to focus on those 2 pieces of data, which are those, actually, but now that you mentioned the diversionary practices, the programs, that's something we'll definitely keep track of. Looking at the overall behavior impact that this has from year over year, as well as that school culture survey for the students. I think that's going to be very valuable information.
Okay.
As far as communicating with the board and like what I've heard from my colleagues, that hasn't come up at any of our school safety meetings, but I do have a couple meetings coming up. I can certainly ask my school safety coordinator colleagues and kind of get a feel. I can tell you where I have worked previously, the board, I don't want to say they weren't interested, but it was just part of their annual report, which is a requirement in every school district that in June, if you'll remember in executive session, I come to you every June with a safe schools report, and I will be adding in that SRO information this year. Well, next year.
Okay, so by your answer then, correct me if I'm wrong, your measurement of how effective they are is not in any agreement that we are currently, if you were to show me those agreements right
No,
now,
the
I would
measurement
not
is
be
not
able to
in there.
know how you're measuring their effectiveness.
No, the measurement would not be in there, but I plan on having that in my report in June to the board, so the board is aware on how I'm going to be measuring effectiveness for this program in that first year, which will be next year. And then in June of 2026, I will be reporting back to the board on how the year went. And hopefully we'll have information along the way.
Yeah.
But definitely by that June of 26. And I agree that should be a information point that is a part of the consideration as to whether or not additional SRO agreements is something that we should move forward with.
Well, I as a person
Or not.
that writes these agreements up for a living, the more specific you are from the front end of the agreement, the better off it's going to be, because it will be forgotten. And we're going to be going back and looking at meetings and saying, what did we talk about there, or whatever else. I, for one, am requesting that you have specific measurables in the agreements before we actually execute that agreement. That's my first request. Now, again, I'm only one, and I understand it's the will of the board here, but I'm just telling you, and forgive me, given your answers, other boards aren't looking at this, but this is taxpayer dollars that we're spending on this. It's local taxpayer dollars, and I want to use them in the most effective way possibly if we're going to go about that.
Sure.
So yes, Mr. Sanders, I do agree that with the measurable standards, but also this is a state mandate, so we really do not have a choice whether or not to have a SRO because it is a state
Well,
mandate.
I agree with you, Ms. Sam Martin, but we have a choice as to how that contract is structured, and we also have a choice as to how we're spending those dollars. So, for me personally, if I'm spending my money on something that I have some ability to use and dictate, I want the best bang for the buck. And if we're going to be a top-tier district, I want to make sure that we are doing top-tier things to ensure that we're getting top-tier service.
Dr. Solomon?
Yeah. I won't put you on the spot now, but if someone from your office could provide Dr. Lorfink with the school years in which your individual agreements became active, like the school years in which your personnel started showing up in individual schools in the county, we can look at Safe Schools data because that's reported annually and has to be collated with local law enforcement organizations as well. So we can look at those together.
Yeah.
And I'm in agreement with Mr. Sanders that we ought to be able to link this to, there are probably school environmental measures in the pays that we look at. There are
Right.
safe schools measures. There are, we'll get a little closer to the MOU stage, and the board will work its will on that document.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, one last question. So I notice, we have officers here. Did you talk to any private armed security agencies at all?
I have not, because we have discussed the importance or the desire for us to go through that school resource officer portion. So that's just something that, like when we had discussed this a couple of years ago, that was the direction that we were going to go in. And we were heading in that direction with Spring Garden, and then it just kind of got put on a pause. So no, I have not.
You haven't even looked at the costs or what their services
no,
are?
I have not.
Just for kind of comparable purposes?
I have not, no.
You have not. Anybody in the administration do that, Dr. Krauser?
So in the prior time, we investigated school police force, which was the original proposal to review there. Those costs were outlined. From an armed security piece, I'll say from a cost perspective, the relationship that's developed by utilizing the local law enforcement within the community, and again, this is from conversations with other local districts, and I say local in the Commonwealth because none locally that I'm aware of in York County utilize a private vendor for that. And I'll kind of come back to the chief's last statement about the relationship, both from a career perspective as well as the relationship with the students in that community. The utilization of a local township or municipality has been the choice that has been the most effective.
So the answer is no.
Correct.
Okay.
I can speak a little bit to that relationship. I have worked in capacity with a private security firm rather than having an SRO force myself, and I found that it was, first of all, it was difficult to have the same person there for a very long longevity-wise. They have a lot of turnover in that kind of relationship. And then the second thing that I found challenging was that if we needed law enforcement for, say, citation purposes, for other things that on the more that legal side, we still had to call the police. So there was an inefficiency that was part of that arrangement that that really having an SRO is much more beneficial to have. We were in a situation, I was in a district that was state police. We didn't have a local anybody around, so we really had not much of a choice, but we would have preferred an SRO.
Okay. And is the cost of the SRO per officer, is it the same at each school, or do you negotiate at an arm's length and each school has their own dollar amount?
So it is based off of the what we call the police protection units of the department, and each school district has a minimum of 3, and then that's how we calculate. So it would be we find out what our PPU is for the year. We take that.
Sorry, PPU?
Yep, police protection unit.
Oh, got it. Okay.
We
Thank
find out what that is for the year. We times that number by 3 because it's basically that's how many hours within that year that we apply to the school district. And then we take 75% of that, and that's the final cost for the district. So, and we do 75% because we're in school 75% of the time. We're in school 9 out of 12 months, basically. So that's how we come up with that. Each district then is a little different because one district may want more time than another one. But the baseline is how I just described it, and that's across the board for all the different districts.
Is that similar in other areas around the county?
I would say for the regional departments, yes. What the other townships do, I'm not sure.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm wondering if perhaps Officer Boyce, having worked in one of the schools, if you could share what you might consider a success story, perhaps regarding a student you have befriended, so to speak, and you've seen perhaps a turnaround. Is this something that you do see?
Can you hear me? There we go. So it happens more often than not. any specific, there is one young lady at the junior high. She comes from a very, very rough home life. Excuse me. Father's been incarcerated for a while. He recently came out. Long story short, she gets picked on, bullied a lot, and she thought it might be a good idea to bring a knife for protection. So it was found. It was seen by a teacher, and we called her up to the office. We got her belongings and got possession of the knife. And she was very, very upset. She's a good student, but again, she comes from a very rough home life. Very quiet, very reserved. And I sat there with the parents, and I explained, I know she didn't mean any ill will, knowing her, but that we absolutely could not have weapons in the school. That there's no excuse for that at all. She knew better. So she was referred to the youth diversionary program. And one of the great things is with that program is when they complete that, they write a letter to us, and that's one of their duties that they have to do during this. They write a letter, and basically she said, "Thank you for not letting me ruin my life and go down the same path my dad did." And since then, every morning when I'm out front, she comes by and she's, "Officer Boyce, good morning." And she never did that before. She was always, like I said, she was always quiet, reserved. But she's a sweet girl. I'd take her home and and let her hang out with my kids if I could. But it happens more often than not. And like I said, they do write letters. They write thank you letters for us when we refer them. Some are not very personal. Some of them are, and you can tell when you really have that effect on them, and really help them out. But it's fun. I've only been in the schools a little over a year. I have close to 21 years of law enforcement experience. I went into the schools January 24, and I do have a teaching background. I have a teaching degree. So before law enforcement, I was a teacher. So going in now, it was, the beginning of last year was me getting to know the kids, and I did float around a lot in Redline. Now I'm pretty much in the junior high full time, and it's great. They come in the morning or at lunch, and always, "Can I get a fist bump?" Giving them fist bumps, and they're coming up, telling me what they did over the weekend. We're talking sports, football games, when they're coming in, and it's great. And I think it's really positive for these kids that may not have an outlet otherwise. That they come in and they see me and they want to talk sports or just a fist bump. They're getting that attention.
So those are situations that you would consider, if you were marking success, the establishment of those relationships.
Yeah, the positive relationships, definitely, yes. Because I think that too. I think knowing that I'm there, knowing me, if they have a problem, instead of going to fight that other student, they'll come up and they'll come into my office. "Hey, can I talk to you?" "Yeah." "Oh, so and so has been saying this, and they're really making me mad, and I don't know what to do. I'm gonna lose it, and I'm gonna get in trouble with you again." And I'll say, "Hey, we'll take care of it, and and they know that, a lot of those kids, they know they can trust me to go, talk to the other student and say, hey, listen, this is not acceptable, and keep it up. You're going to be the one getting in trouble, not them. So it's really, again, those positive relationships. It kind of filters through, and they know, hey, I'm there, and I'm there if they need help, and I'm there to deter any of that negative behavior that may have occurred.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Anything else, Dr. Lorfink? Thank you for that. Mrs. Kindig?
Thank you. The following items, business office items, are being presented for discussion. They will be recommended for approval during the regular monthly meeting scheduled for March 24th, 2025. So for 7.3a, as a part of our agreement with Crabtree Warball, they have conducted an RFP for civil engineering services for our high school project. Because of the collaborative nature of the relationship between the civil engineer and an architect, this is handled as a supplemental contract through Crabtree Warball. However, this agreement is between the engineer and the district. Engineers, before you are the results of that RFP, the administration is recommending Steckbeck Engineers as the successful firm. We will be seeking the board's approval for the civil engineer at our next meeting on March 24th. I would like to invite Mr. Seth Wentz from Crabtree Warball up to the microphone to answer any of your questions you may have about the RFP.
Good evening.
Good evening. I think the board is keenly aware of the importance of the civil engineer in the entire process through design and development and approvals. This civil engineer, this proposal is for the high school project, as Ms. Kendig had mentioned. They are important to have on board at the very beginning of the project. They go through the initial land survey, that's part of their contract, as well as the deed research on the property. And they determine if there's been any agreements that would alter the zoning on the project moving forward. As such, without that research, they can't guarantee any of their initial findings, which is why we structured the proposal in a way that outlined their traditional land development process with the township, which each engineer that provided a proposal did reach out to the township and verify their process and the duration of that, as well as what they anticipate if there is a need for zoning relief, and that's listed there as well for each respondent. Crabtree did reach out to multiple engineers. Typically, we reach out to 2 or 3 and try and get about 3 responses total. This time, because of the busy nature of civil engineers and the market the way it is right now, we had to reach out to 7 just to get 3 able respondents who are qualified. As far as the 7 we reached out to, we did coordinate with Fidavia and recommendations to continue to reach out. Like I said, we had to cast a wider net than we typically do. And actually, the low Steckbeck, that was actually a recommendation from Fidavia. When I was here reporting about soliciting these RFPs, that was the engineer I was talking about reaching out to following that last meeting because we were having such a low response in our hits. As far as the important nature, there is a lot of back and forth at the beginning of the process through the architecture team and the civil engineers. The civil engineer's first task is to go through, like I mentioned previously, go through and do the survey, do the deed research. And while they're doing that, the architecture team is typically working on refining the program, finding efficiencies, and establishing a footprint. And there's a lot of back and forth at the very beginning of that. That back and forth is to establish the outline of the building, the constraints of the site, and anything that needs to go into that sketch plan review, which is a critical meeting with the township to determine if there is or is not, in fact, zoning relief required, or any other type of relief. With that, I will open it up to questions.
Dr. Sullivan?
If renovations at the high school were to consist exclusively of mechanical or MEP, as you're referring to it, and the $4 million level repair to the pool, are these services necessary?
It depends on how that shakes out. If there's a disturbance in land that exceeds what would be needed, if there's disturbance in land that would require any kind of land development, and there's a square footage requirement, I don't know off the top of my head, then the answer would be yes. If there's not that disturbance, if it's under that minimum threshold, then the answer would be no. But as the board directive that was received, and what these proposals were based on, was the construction of a new pool, which would require expansion outside the existing footprint.
Board members?
All right,
Mr.
nobody
Sanders?
else? And thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Good question. How many projects have you worked on with these engineers?
Me personally, 0. But at our firm in the past 2 years, we have had 2 projects with 2 different project managers, both successful and one extremely successful.
What do you mean? What's the difference between successful and extremely successful?
I talked to the 2 project managers. One said they did a good job, as average as you would expect. The other project manager said they really went above and beyond. So it was 2 different project managers. I'd be requesting, if they were approved, the project manager that went above and beyond.
Okay, was Fidavia involved in both of those projects as well?
I can't speak to Fidavia's experience on those projects.
Okay, but they brought them to your attention,
Correct.
Okay, so 2 projects in 2 years. Have they worked with your firm at all prior to that, or?
That's the 2 projects I was able to touch base with project managers on.
Where were those projects at?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I certainly can follow up.
Okay, but you talked to the project managers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you didn't ask them where the projects were located?
I asked them what their experiences were on the projects, and that's as far as I needed to go.
Really?
They were both public school projects. They were both consistent with the work being performed here.
But you weren't curious as to where those schools were located? I'd like to know where the schools were located.
I can certainly follow up with that, yes.
Well, thank you. Other than low cost, was there any other reason that you thought these guys were the best?
Yeah, so before and after the proposals were submitted, I touched base with each of the project managers that were preparing the proposals. All of them understood the proposal ahead of time. All of them had very relevant questions, did have extensive conversations. And then after receiving the proposals, without sharing any information on the other proposals as far as numbers, I confirmed with each respondent that they understood the scope, that they were prepared to work immediately, and that they felt confident their proposal was all-encompassing of the basic services.
Have these guys ever worked in York County?
They have worked in York County, yes.
In a school project?
On a school project, yes.
And you didn't ask what the school was? I'm just kind of curious. Do you know, Dr. Krauser? Have you? I'd be curious to know what school they worked on locally. This is kind of odd that you had that level of conversation, but the school that they worked on was never asked. It's just weird.
Again, as I mentioned previously, I can certainly follow up with additional information on their credentials.
Okay. And you didn't ask that question either? You weren't curious? Not at all. Just kind of take it, and they worked on 2 school projects. They were low cost, and one was successful and one was extremely successful, although you don't know the schools. I'd want to know it. Thanks.
I can follow up with that for sure.
Mrs. San Martin?
Hi, Seth. I wanted to know what zoning reliefs, if any, do you foresee in the project?
Yeah, so I guess my biggest concern would be the impervious area coverage. This is a combined site, both the high school and Valley View Elementary, as well as the facilities building and the district office. It's complicated in that respect. You have a lot of different uses, you have a lot of different needs, you have a lot of impervious area on the site. That would be the first place to start. As all the civil engineers that were responding to this and coordinating responded, they can't make that determination without doing the deed research. They don't know what agreement has already been put in place. They also don't know what waivers may or may not be in place, and that may or may not make it easier on their approval process. If there's an existing exemption, then it could be grandfathered into the approval process. So really what they need to do is get that survey done, do a full analysis of the site, really dig into the zoning for or what's specific on the site. But it would be the impervious is my biggest concern. I guess my second biggest concern would be parking, but the 2 of those go hand in hand.
Anybody else? Could you speak to, just briefly, the importance of what these folks will be doing for us?
Sure. This is a project that really only wants to be done once. You know, adding on to this building, renovating this building, traffic patterns, the flow, the use of the space. You want to maximize and create the best project that you possibly can, not just for circulation in and out of the site, but the daily use of students. All of these are conversations that happen with the school district, the administration, the board, as we go through this process. All of these items are things that are very impactful to not only the way the building functions and the site functions and the community experience around the site, but also the student experience on a daily basis. So what they do really impacts everybody that uses a facility and the community at large.
Thank you. Anything further for Mr. Wentz?
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so item 7.3B. This is an agreement with Yellow Breeches for 3 elementary placements in the 25-26 school year for an amount of $38,894 per student, with the optional transportation for up to 3 students at a rate of $23,191. This is an increase of $6,000 per student per year, as well as a $500 increase in transportation costs per student. And this $500 increase is actually over 23-24, as we did not utilize their transportation this year for the students that attend Yellow Breeches. Items 7.3 C and D are MOUs that partner the district with organizations who can provide the needed services for our students at no cost to the district. Item 7.3E is approval of the renewal of an LIU 12 Joint Purchasing Board Electric Participation Agreement, as well as the energy contract. We buy our energy through energy, and the LIU conducts that program, and this is basically a renewal of that, extending us into the year 2027. And finally, 7.3F is to appoint Saxton Stump as the district solicitor due to the current solicitor, Stock and Leader, joining that firm for the period of April 1st through 2025 through June 30th of 2025, and for the 2025-26 school year, in accordance with the attached engagement letter dated March 7th, 2025. Are there any questions on the items?
I believe did you miss D?
I put C and D together because they're both MOUs.
Understood. Any questions for Mrs. Kindig regarding any of these items?
I just want to make sure when we're posting the minutes, or possibly sooner, can we attach the RFP information that was just presented from Crabtree?
Yes.
So, question on, as you're putting together the budget for next fiscal year, what do you have for legal services compared to this year?
I think
Year-over-year growth.
I think I put about 10%.
10%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so you're expecting more in legal services next year.
I'm looking at what has been spent over the average, and then I did increase it just a little bit, but being my first budget in this school year, I'm kind of trying to gauge what has been spent in the past and where we are.
Okay, so you're expecting more in legal work, but if I look at the rates in the Saxton and Stump
And not necessarily more in legal work, just more in
Okay,
expenses.
I want to clarify.
Sorry.
I want to make
Yeah.
sure I understand.
Yeah.
So if
I
I
don't
look at Saxton and
anticipate-
Stump, they're increasing their rates for next year 6 to 8%. Some of the associates are up north of 8%. So are you including that in the budget for next year?
I just got, this just came across my desk, so I have to go back and look at that.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page, or you're on the same page for that. So, okay, thank you.
So these are items that we'll discuss now and will be on the agenda as action items at our next meeting. Any further questions, discussion on any of these items?
That concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to 7.4, Director of Communications and Community Relations, Mrs. Furman. Hi, good evening.
Hi. Good evening, everyone.
So I'm excited to share with everyone an update on our efforts to identify a new website and mass communication vendor for the district. Feel free to stop me at any time. This is kind of my wheelhouse, something I get very excited about, so I might start talking quickly, so just let me know if I need to slow down. So kind of starting off here with just a little bit of background, our why as to why we're doing this now. As I've shared in the past, our current website platform is something we've been using since 2018. It does utilize WordPress and then a feature called Beaver Builder. And as it's getting older, some of the plugins are no longer being supported. We've had to kind of, I know I've shared this before, but MacGyver some things to make them work. It's not an ideal situation. And with the new website accessibility standards coming into effect in April of 2027, we want to be prepared and have a website that's going to meet those requirements and also have staff already prepared to utilize them as well. So this just seemed to provide a good opportunity to kind of improve the functionality of our website and also meet some of those other needs. So the next slide, looking at the background of our mass communications platform. I'm not sure exactly how long we've been using it. I couldn't find that. Maybe Mr. Henry knows, but it seems as though we've been using it for a while. And it does limit us into how many languages we can translate. Currently that is 5. It also is limiting us to how many text messages we can send out to per family, which, as we know, dynamics change in families, and oftentimes it would be nice if we could text message 2 sets of parents. So that's something I'd like to add as well. So again, just an opportunity presented itself. If you do bundle mass communications with website, you often get a deal. There's also some features as far as being able to push out information simultaneously to both platforms. So I thought I'd take advantage of that at this time. So as you might remember, back in November, we put out an RFP, and we did receive 11 proposals to that, which is extraordinary compared to other districts that I've talked to. They usually don't get near that many. 7 of those vendors did have experience working in education, whether that be a K-12 public education situation, a private school, or a college. And Mr. Henry, God love him, he sat with me as we went through some of these rather lengthy RFPs and looked at what they were offering, what they were going to be able to provide, not just immediately for the district, but long term. And we had a rubric that we used to kind of evaluate them, and we'll talk a little bit more about the evaluation items that we use in the next slide. But from those original RFPs, we did narrow it down to 3 vendors that we really thought had the tools that we needed, not just to meet our immediate needs, but would also be a good partner moving forward. Because as you might know, converting a website or transitioning the content from one to another is quite a lengthy process, and we'd like to have a solution that we can use for at least a little while. And the 3 vendors we did narrow it down to were Aptigee, Final Site, and Parent Square, which are platforms used quite often in the state of Pennsylvania for K-12 public schools. So yeah, getting into the evaluation tools. So one of the things that we thought was really important was a responsive design, and that's the ability not just to look good on your laptop, but also on your phone, on your tablet, whatever device you might be utilizing. We're seeing more and more families are coming home from work and they're not opening their computer, they're just going to their phone to look for information or to social media. So we'd like to have a place that is their first go-to for district information, and having a responsive design goes a long way towards people wanting to go to our website and utilize it. Translation, also a big thing. Auto translation into multiple languages is something that was important to me as we were looking forward this. The website solutions that we did narrow it down to had the ability to, if your phone is registered for Spanish, for instance, then when you go to our website, it will automatically load in Spanish. So the person doesn't have to click anything, it's just automatically there. Accessibility, it is what it is. It's something we need to be compliant with. And we were looking for a website solution that not only had some safeguards in place, like asking you to add an alt tag, but that had some additional features as far as making sure that people can't post content that won't be ADA compliant, or allows you to add PDFs and other tools in an ADA compliant way. So that was something that we were looking at and we used to evaluate the vendors. Advanced search features. If you've gone to our current website, the searching isn't great. You pretty much have to spell someone's name exactly correctly or enter in the terminology exactly right for it to take you to the website. And even then, it might involve a click or two to find the information you want. So looking at the advanced search features so that it uses syntax. So if you type my last name in, which is oftentimes misspelled. People always forget the H. It will still suggest it, like Google does, so it helps to direct you into the right place. And that advanced search also does have some things in place to help with staff directories and other things that right now can be cumbersome. Intuitive navigation. So what that means is, so when you go to the website, are things where you think they should be. And so currently right now we're limited to one toolbar. I wanted to have some other features, whether that be toolbars along the site, a staff, parent, and student portal perhaps across the top, things to kind of help you find your way quickly so that everything's within 1 or 2 clicks away. That's usually my goal in a website whenever possible, is to not require someone to click more than twice. And so that was something we were looking for as well. And with that comes the design. We wanted it to be aesthetically pleasing, and while I'd love for the design to be the number one thing, that really was low on the list, as you'll see here. We want it to be unique. We want it to definitely portray our branding. But if a website can't be read and can't be seen on your laptop device, it really doesn't matter how pretty it looks. It's not going to be functional. So that's something we're looking for, but also coming underneath those other evaluation tools. And then the content migration is going to be a huge undertaking. I'm sure we're going to kind of do as you move from house to house, some house cleaning. Not everything's going to make it. Some things are going to just be archived, which is the beauty of our WordPress site. We will maintain that, and we'll be able to keep that information, even if it won't be publicly facing. We'll have it to rely back on later on. So in staff training, while I would love to be all the things for all the people, sometimes you need to have staff training available coming directly from the company, because there's going to be things that come up that I won't be able to train people on how to do. So looking for a vendor that has ongoing staff training, so as new staff come on board, they can enroll in that training, whether that be online or through a group process. That was an important evaluation tool. And then, of course, there's security and reliability. We don't want our website to be going down all the time. We don't want people to be hacking into it. Although we don't necessarily put student information or data on the website, you still want to maintain those security features and not have it be a risk. And then pricing, of course, is very important. It's something that we look at, not just for the annual fee, which most websites that provide K-12 solutions do include, but also that setup fee, which is going to involve content migration, getting that design, getting our sitemap established in those things. And then references were something else we use to evaluate, not just those that the vendors provided, but also those that if I knew another school district that was utilizing them, I reached out to find out what their experience was in the moving to that platform and also then the ongoing use of them. While I love that the vendors were happy to provide us with references, I don't always trust the ones that they give and prefer to do my own research in that realm. So, any questions so far? That was a lot, and I talked very fast. Excellent, because now we're getting into the fun stuff. So using those kind of evaluation tools, that was kind of helped us narrow it down to 3. We had those come in for a website vendor, and we had a group of folks join us. It was Valentine's Day. What's not to love? Some highlights that we saw from the demo, in addition to the proposal that they had given us during the RFP process of Final Site, the one that we ended up unanimously, I would say, choosing as the solution we wanted of the 3. They do have a very intuitive navigation system with lots of different ways that we can utilize the templates that they have available to customize it for what our families need. And Dr. Krauser and I, we meet with a parent advisory group and a community advisory group. We've already been talking with them about, what are things you go for to look for on the website? Are you able to find it? What could we do to make that experience a little easier? So that work has already started to be done, but I'll be looking for more feedback as the process goes on. The next thing is they use something called Weglot, and admittedly that wasn't something I was familiar with prior to the demos and had to do a little research on afterwards. So Final Site was the only company that shared that that's the tool they use for language translation, and in my research I found that it actually has a higher overall accuracy rating than using Google Translate alone. So it works in tandem with Google Translate, but has some different features in that, so it's more intuitive, so it has a better idea of what you're looking for and translates accordingly. For instance, not translating a makeup day into a cosmetic day or something along those lines, to kind of like, it knows we're a school district, and if you're searching for those kind of things, it would translate it appropriately. It's still not going to be foolproof, but from what I've been reading, it's much more accurate than Google Translate alone. They also have unlimited 24/7 support. Some of the vendors we looked at through RFP process actually charge you. So every time you pick up the phone or put in a help desk ticket, they're billing those individually. The Final Site does not, and it offers 24/7 because I'm sure the time that we actually need the help is when we're in an emergency situation, and of course those don't always happen from 9 to 5. The accessibility and monitoring was something, and the ADA audit during migration was something that really stood out, I think, for everyone that saw the demo that day. They actually have a feature at the bottom of all their websites where you can adjust it not just for accessibility in terms of screen readers and those alt tags, which are important for photos, but also if you'd like the font to be larger, if you'd prefer your text on a black background, if you're someone who, like me, who loves Verdania over all other fonts, you can change it to that. So it has other features in there to really make it usable for anyone and whatever their needs may be. I think the fact that you could increase the font size quite easily and then have it maintain those selections the next time you come back to our website was something that really appealed to me as my eyes are getting older and the little print is getting harder to read. But also just being responsive to those that are visiting the website, not just our families and students, but older people in the community who would benefit from those features. Are you off to a game? Oh, good luck. I was going to wish you good luck if you were in a game. And then the secure and reliable web hosting, also very important. They actually has a couple different places so that you're not just, if the servers go down on the East Coast due to whatever, that they have servers on the West Coast as well so they can get that website back up and running either simultaneously or very, very quickly. And then the positive reference checks, the overwhelming positive feedback that I received from those who went with Final Site, who've been using Final Site for years, who've gone to it and not looked back, and also the feedback, especially on their ADA compliance. That was the thing I think that most people mentioned was great, and how the tools that they had built in to make it easy to meet that compliance. And then you also get like a little certificate on their website so that if people are looking for school districts that aren't ADA compliant, ours is going to have a little thing saying like this page has been accurately evaluated and kind of move along to another school district that maybe doesn't have that certificate. So Final Site is one of the more popular platforms used in the state of Pennsylvania. They're very proud of that, and I think if there was one website solution that ticked all the boxes, that's the one that everyone in the state would be using. But I think Final Site was the one that met most of our needs and that are particular and unique to our parents, students, and community. I think I also spent some time with another school district that's using Final Site currently, so that the web demo they give you, of course, everything runs smoothly, the pages load quickly. I was able to actually see a school district that's using it currently and how they are utilizing it. Are there some bumps? Of course, again, nothing is perfect and gonna meet all your needs, but what workarounds they've had, and but still very positive. They wouldn't have changed using any other platform. So kind of then getting into the nuts and bolts here, how much it's going to cost. The setup, now this is the projections that they put in their proposal. So we don't have a current contract from them. If I get the board's go ahead, then that's something that Mr. Henry and I will reach out to them and see if we can get a little better deal than what they put in their proposal. Some things that they had included was a $15,000 setup. Now I have talked to other school districts where they're sometimes willing to adjust that pricing depending on how much work I'm willing to do. This will be actually my 5th website conversion in my career, so I kind of know what I'm getting into, and I'm hoping that I can leverage that with them to reduce our price and take on some of that work myself. So that's some place we have wiggle room. We also have that the mass comms wouldn't be starting until January. Maybe they'll let us start that a little early, and then we can discontinue our use of our current platform, which is costing us around under $5,000 a year. So we'll have a little bit of a savings there from that. So it's my plan to get my my good friend Mr. Henry to help me leverage some things with them to see if we can't get this price reduced. But as they projected it and as they put in their proposal, this is the cost that it will be per year. So Right now, we're paying a little under $5,000 for just the mass comms. It would be around $16,000 for that and the website. And again, we are not paying anything right now for our current website provider. Just full disclosure, with WordPress, it is free. There might be some things, maybe Mr. Henry, that we're paying for, but very minor, as opposed to we're not doing a. Okay, so it is going to be a cost. So that is a factor that we have to keep in mind. But I did want to move on this sooner than later with the website accessibility guidelines coming. And I don't have a lot of confidence that our current website will meet those accessibility guidelines, which could cost us money then later if we run into it. So any questions now before I move into the next steps? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're going to the last site, but you mentioned several times that you've talked to local school districts
Yeah.
related to how they use these services here. How many local school districts did you talk to?
So Derry Township was the one I went and actually visited with. And then I belong to the National School Public Relations Association.
Right.
So I asked on there, it's like a private blog, but different people there. So they were from all over the country, not just limited to Pennsylvania. I also spoke locally with Spring Grove. They transitioned to them just recently, and we have a local LIU group that we talked to, so I talked to them. But it was interesting, the National School Public Relations Association, the people who shared, who had gone to Final Site over the other platforms, Apogee and Parent Square, and what their experience were, or people who had been with Final Site, gone to Apogee, and then wished that they hadn't, or there were people vice versa, the same way. They're all good platforms, or they wouldn't have made it to our top 3. But I'm certainly welcome to talk to more references if you'd like. I felt good about the people I heard from, and that they had a lot of experience dealing with websites, more years of experience than myself even, and the different things that they were willing to answer my questions on.
So, and it's like anything else. I can read 1,000 5-star reviews, but I gravitate to the 1-star and see if there's a common theme. Was there a common theme that would have been a 1-star, or if they could change this?
The thing that if they could, so the couple people I talked to that used Final Site and Apogee said that Apogee was much better about the content migration, about taking that on. It's a heavy lift, and they did a lot of it. Final Site was not as good at bringing over the content in a way that looked good. So the complaint was that sometimes Final Site would get the information there, but it might not look good, might not have headings, bolded or things like that. So it would be more work on my end to make sure that the content is in an accessible way and it's not just dumped on a page.
Yep.
So I think dumped on the page was perhaps the term used. Okay. So it's going to be a little more work, but I viewed that as a one-time inconvenience once the page is up and running, as opposed to the ongoing thing of the website running smoothly. The customer support got great reviews from people who've used Final Site as far as their responsiveness and their ability to help, and if you want changes, they're willing to make those without nickel-diming you, like, oh, you want to change this? Well, that's going to cost some extra money, which some people do that anytime you would like a change. They work in, so if there's a new update with the website accessibility, that automatically rolls in and your page automatically gets up to date to that, where some other website solutions, they charge you for that update. But yeah, I'm a 1-star reviewer on Amazon as well. So I was disappointed to hear that the conversion to their new platform does not always run as smoothly. But I feel like that's more just on my shoulders that's not going to work. And then once we get it up and running, then everyone else will just have the content there. So
maybe they have a sister company that does consulting to fix those migrate. I'm kidding. I applaud you for doing your due diligence for a $15,000 a year expenditure. And Dr. Krauser, we're about ready to look at a $300,000+ expenditure. She knows more about local school districts than Crabtree Rohrbal did. I'm shocked at that. That's disappointing to hear that Seth Wentz didn't know what local school districts had used an engineer. But we have an excellent communications person here that did her due diligence on $15,000 a year. I really hope you get those local school districts for the engineer.
Any other questions about the cost? Yes, Dr. Sullivan.
So, mass communications. Mass communications, as within the four corners of what I'm looking at here really seems to emphasize mass electronic communications.
Yes. So the ability to call, text, or email would be under their mass communication system.
Okay. So this vendor is not scoped in any way to support any workflow that involve putting a piece of hard copy mail in every mailbox.
No, there isn't a vendor that bundles that.
And that's all in-house.
That's all in-house.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. They do have the ability, because we'd be using both platforms, the website and the mass communications, to push the information out into the website simultaneously as an email communication goes out, which now you either have to manually do it or sometimes it just doesn't get done, which people tend to lose emails. I know some of the AAs we talked to were very excited about that, because then they could refer people when they call, oh, that email went out last week, it's on our website, you can quickly find it there. But to your point, print work is a separate beast of itself, so that will still be something I'd be managing.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that we don't lose track of that beast, because
No,
the old
no.
magics still matter
Yeah,
in terms of getting
that is
information to
also
people.
budgeted. I worked with Mrs. Kendig, and we included budgeting for 2 newsletters for next year, and we'll be having a spring one coming out here before you know it. So,
Mrs. Sen Martin?
Hi, Ms. Foreman.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. I just had 2 questions. One was the cost for all 3 proposals, those 3 RFPs that you went through, were the costs comparable, or?
they were comparable. Parent Square was a little less expensive, and some of them, they might have a higher setup cost and then a lower annual fee, but they were all comparable. Parent Square was the cheapest, and I think the comments after the website demo was, there was a reason for that. It didn't have some of the features and some of the things that the AAs really liked about that would make their workflow a little easier. So it seems like sometimes it's better to pay just a little bit extra, but they were all comparable, the ones we chose. There were some that didn't make the final 3 that were in the 100,000 range. Now they were lovely websites, but even as beautiful as they were, they didn't meet some of our needs and some of the valuation criteria, especially in light of their mass communications and how that work. There are just some benefits to going with a vendor that specializes in K-12, which is what we're looking to do.
Okay, and then my follow-up question, will our current website be marked like under construction, or will you be able to work on, like, have one available for the community and then work on the other one separately?
Yeah, so the current website, that one beauty of it, since it is just a WordPress site, there's no timeline for it to go away. Okay. So we'll be able to still have that page up until the new site's ready to launch. And that's kind of, it's going to lead nicely into the next step slide. But the plan ultimately is to have a website that is available for our staff to train on and get used to, like November to December. They can kind of look at the back end. It's something different than when you actually have your content there and you're actually starting to work with it. And then we want to double check, did the staff directories merge over correctly? Is the content all there that we wanted it there? Is there things we're missing? Is the navigation tools all working? So we'll have some time over the holidays to kind of really look at that. And then it'll be at our discretion when we launch the new site. Final Site's giving us, I think, 11 weeks is their estimate on timeline, which seems very aggressive to me, especially being a little bit of a perfectionist and knowing that I'm going to have to do a little more heavy lifting on the content migration. So if it takes a little longer, it takes a little longer. Once the site is ready, then we'll be discussing it with the community and making sure everyone's comfortable. I've launched websites, new platforms in August and September and over the summer before. It creates a lot of anxiety, not just for the folks on our side that are using it, that are now, getting ready for the new school year, and then also making sure this new website's up, but also for families who have always gone to a certain place to get certain information, and now it's not there. So I thought doing it in January, or if I'm not ready and I want to move it till February would be a much better time of the year. There's no pressure for people to be locating information. We have a couple months to kind of ease into it, and then come August, it's old hat. Everyone, like the updates you get on your phone, you forget what the old one looked like already. So that was the plan.
And now that you mentioned the cell phones, will they be readable very well on the mobile devices?
Yeah, so I know I talked a lot about the website tonight, which I think is kind of because that's, while our mass communication system isn't ideal, especially with the translation features, it's still, I wouldn't have rushed to change that if we weren't also looking at the website. But speaking of mobile devices, the new website, it is responsive. So if you have the larger iPhone, it'll fit that. If you have the smaller iPhone, it'll fit that. If you're an Android user, we don't want to talk to you, but still, it'll look good on that. And it also will look good on different browsers. So whether you're a Safari, a Chrome, Explorer browser, it'll also look good on those. So I think that's just coming naturally with the different proposals. Now it's an expectation that everyone rises to that. But the other thing with the mass communications now, it's very difficult to send out a mass communication on your phone. If I would need to do that, it would be quite cumbersome, and I can't say that it would be efficiently done. I want to be prepared if we would need to communicate something and we wouldn't have internet service, that I could use my phone and my cell service to get a communication out quickly. Or if I was on site with something and Dr. Krauser needed to get a phone call out in an emergency situation, we want to be able to do that from our phone. And that was one thing with this new website, and they all did it, not just Final Site, had that ability to send out communications from your phone easily, quickly, efficiently. And in times of crisis, that's going to be really important that we can do that. So that was one thing about the mass communication now that that was disappointing to me when I first arrived, and looking at how I could send out communications from my phone in an emergency if needed. Sure. Good. So now the next slide, the next steps, as I touched on earlier, we're going to negotiate that contract, see if we can't get, they haven't been notified yet that they were our selected vendor. So I'm going to call them tomorrow, let them know, and then see if we can't get them to sharpen. You never know. I don't want to. Well, now they know. I had told them originally we'd have the meeting on the 12th, so they're probably not listening in just yet. But yes, it is a public meeting. Congratulations, Final Site. So we'll see if we can't if you're listening. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, see if they can't sharpen their pencils a little bit, see what I can't leverage. I do have a lot of people that I mentor, and so I'm going to kind of leverage that, people come to me and ask me what I'm using. So maybe I could be your next spokesperson if you cut me a break on our contract. I am going to recommend a 3-year contract, or I am recommending, I should say. That first year is going to be the big cost will be the content migration, and I want to make that valuable. Also, it does take 3 to 4 years to really get comfortable with the website, and from what Final Site works in, I can change the template. So even if we're still staying with them, but we get tired of how it looks, we can switch the template, and because everything's in the back end and the way that it is, it'll just immediately update, and that won't be an additional cost. So it could look like we get a new website without actually switching vendors. So then, pending board approval, we'd begin implementation in July, and all that means is that beginning process of coming up with a sitemap, choosing a template, and then moving forward with actually bringing over the information. And then with that website reveal in January as a tentative timeline, but if needed, we could push it a little bit later. So. And then we'll just put up the last slide here, and then I'll answer questions. Those are some of the local districts that we had reached out to, or I had reached out to and talked to about their experience. I forgot, Southern New York was another one that I had talked to, and just in our LIU chat, and asked them about their experience. So you can see, even though all 4 of these districts are using the same platform, Final Site, they all kind of have a unique look, and ours will have a unique look as well, so that when you go there, you immediately know you're on a York Suburban website. My goal with the design mostly will be to make it look professional, unique, and also attractive. The website is one of the first things people see when they're looking to join our district as an employee. You want it to be navigating, you want to get that good first impression. It's also something people look at when they're looking to possibly move into our district. So there is value there into making it something that, not that we're proud of, but that is useful, but also that will serve that purpose as to setting us apart from other districts in the area. But that was all I had for tonight. Any other
Mrs.
questions?
Farrick?
I just wanted to say, as the former chair of this committee, thank you so much for the time and energy and for getting the people together and spending the time and giving us this report. And I would strongly urge the board to approve this at our next meeting. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time and your support of this.
Well done, thank you. Okay, that takes us to 8.0, our action items for the evening. The consent agenda items are listed below. Would any board member like any of these items considered separately, or are there questions on any of these items? If not, I'd ask a motion be made to approve the below mentioned items. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there is there any discussion on any of these items?
Yeah, I have a question on the AI. I just want to.
Mr. Sanders, this is on the policy 8.1J.
J. So I just want to clarify, and I don't know who the right person is to answer that. Maybe it's Mr. Henry, maybe it's you, Dr. Krauser, I don't know. But when approving the AI platforms that will be permitted by the district, is there a committee? Is that done by the who's approving the AI platforms? One, and number two, I know there's websites that get blocked on district machines, district equipment, or if you're using, I guess, district, I'll call it internet plumbing. How is that working for AI?
Sure, I can certainly have Mr. Henry comment to that. The process review cycle will be developed during the administrative guidelines if the board approves the policy. Relative to the specifics on the blocking, I'll defer to Mr. Henry on that comment.
Certainly on our devices, AI is more and more being a category that we monitor and filter and block. So as we narrow down exactly what we're supporting, then we can use our existing systems to manage that on our system or on our devices, to the degree that that's possible. Obviously, I can't manage every device in the world that students can access, but certainly we can on ours.
No, yeah, I'm not asking. There's like tons coming out. I wouldn't say every day, but every time I talk to somebody, there's Claude, there's Joe, there's Bill, there's whatever. There all these different aggregators, or not aggregators, generative, whatever they are, different phases and whatever stage they're at. So I guess my question, I'm trying to understand the process for how you're approving these, and in that process, where are you taking guidance from? Is it PSBA? Is there a school district AI recommending policy committee? I mean, where's it coming from?
I think we're seeing it from several directions, certainly in our tech committees and our job alike through IU12, through all the PA, IUNet, all of those organizations. We're looking more and more at how we're managing these. Our legal pool solicitor, is supplying information on exactly, what the legal aspects are, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and where they are. Our vendors like Bloxy and those, again, are working to categorize those AI tools that we can not have to catch each one. We have someone to do that for us so that we can determine, which, as you pointed out, there's always new sites available as there are in any category. So we're looking at getting those categorized and ultimately trying to come up with the solutions that we can best monitor. But it's like all filtering and blocking and those pieces,
Right.
You're always chasing a moving target, but we do have those tools in place as far as, I think they pointed out how we did training with the teachers and everything on AI tools at our last professional development. So we're getting teacher input on just exactly what tools they'd like to use, what tools are available. Of course, Google has their tools, and that's integrated with what we're doing. So there's some benefit there as far as monitoring and those pieces. But it certainly is a work in progress. And we're counting on all of our professionals in our district and our resources, pulling those together to come up with, exactly what are the right answers, what we're going to use and what we're not going to use.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Henry. I appreciate it.
So if I'm reading the policy correctly, if I'm reading the delegation and responsibility section correctly, it sounds like we are standing up a work group, although we're not calling it a work group, that is building principals, technology director, and then the director of curriculum and instruction. And that's at the shall be evaluated and authorized on an ongoing basis as part of the set of responsibilities for that group. So it sounds like we're saying those three people authorize things.
Correct. And as the administrative guidelines are developed, the utilization similar to our evaluation process on, requests, resources, things like that will be detailed and articulated in that process with that team.
Okay. And I would agree with Mr. Sanders' assessment. They're going to be busy because every time we turn around, there's a new AI feature and some existing platform or app or whatever else. That
Absolutely.
Correct. And that's where a little bit of that lean comes back onto Mr. Henry and his team. As more technological resources can filter, apply, and use kind of, for lack of better terms, AI on the alternative end of it as well.
Okay.
Any?
Yep, and I have a question, or I just want to point something out in the library resources. I do appreciate the clarification and the additional language that was put in there about parents being able to have input on what resources or library books their children can utilize, and that they don't have input on others, because, again, I don't want somebody else saying what my kid can or cannot do. My kids are open to read a lot of different books, and I talk to a lot of people about that, and I don't hear a theme about, I know there's a theme out there of book banning, and there's certain groups out there that think that that's going on, but I'm glad this policy clarifies that. So, I don't know where that theme's coming from. It's never been an issue at this school district, but it's been brought up on certain websites out there. So I'm very happy that it's clarified in this policy.
Okay, so.
Sorry, Director Sharp.
Oh, sure.
So I wanted to comment on actually both of those policies. So I'll start with AI. I just want to comment that the notion of blocking AI for the sake of we don't understand it, I would strongly urge against.
Right.
I think, especially when it comes to our staff and our teachers, they're not going to be able to understand how to implement it well if they don't have the chance to use it. And in the real world, outside of these four walls, our students have access to it.
And I can respond to that directly. The philosophy and the application of the administration has been to embrace it. It is a tool, how to educate students on how to use it, how to implement it. It's used both through the tech department as well as the administrators. The high school's been doing activities. Mrs. Cunningham's been leading quite a bit of that across the district.
And I've seen other districts have gotten a bit further than we have with how they're treating AI, and I hope we're going in the direction that many of them have, where they're kind of coming up with a rubric of appropriateness of using AI and a scale of it. And that is just the norm that everybody in the district knows is happening. And I hope that's where we're going with it.
That process is underway.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When it comes to the library resource policy, I just want the board to be aware. I've heard from 2 of our library staff professionals who have thanked me and therefore the board in the work that we've done in implementing that policy. We've not had issues here, so I'm really glad that we're going to have this out there for everyone to view. Although I know we've had challenges, and recently actually a family at Valley View burned a book because they didn't want it in our library. So having this approved is definitely alleviating anxiety that our library professionals have, and they are thankful for us considering this policy.
Anybody else? Okay, because we're working under this new format, I just want to clarify, this is approving the minutes, the personnel report, which you guys have attached to your agenda. It's approving the 1, 2, 3 contracts or expenditures from the business office. And it's approving these 6 policies. This would have been our, third read. So this is the vote, a consent agenda for these items. Last chance for any further discussion. Are there any votes to the contrary? Hearing none, it can be considered a unanimous vote. That takes us to 9.0, our informational items. Mrs. Fryrick, you're up first.
Yay. The only thing I have are the highlights from the March 4th, 2025 LIE board meeting that you can reference if you're interested in that. I have nothing from the JOA, and nor do I have any report for York Adams Academy.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, your legislative update, please.
Thank you, Madam President. For those of you who don't have plans on St. Patrick's Day in large metropolitan areas for St. Patrick's Day parades, you'll be happy to know the Education Committee of the House is providing an alternative, a hearing at 10 o'clock in the morning on HB 354, which covers Pennsylvania stories. On February 25th, the House Education Committee met to discuss the issue of teacher certification, specifically how to remedy the growing number of vacancies, teacher vacancies within our Commonwealth. As many of you know, years ago, we graduated close to 19,000 young people who are going into the teaching profession. Currently, we graduate less than 6,000. The hearing was comprised largely of stopgap measures to raid other states, pass emergency certifications, and otherwise fill the gaps expediently. Very little attention was given to long-range solutions. The following day, February 26th, the Senate Appropriations Committee met to discuss educational funding. The Acting Secretary of Education, Dr. Carrie Rowe, faced 5 hours of interviews after having been on the job for only 7 days. She acquitted herself rather well in the face of some hostile questioning that concerned equities in funding. It seemed to this reporter that some of the senators launching these questions did not fully digest the import of the Basic Education Funding Commission hearings that took place last year. And it may be that this controversy will continue for some time. The basic thrust of the argument from some senators was we're spending record amounts of money on education without taking into account we're also letting record amounts of money flow out of our public schools to cyber charter and charter schools. Oddly enough, even though the Auditor General's report came out recently, there was very little discussion of the excesses of cyber charter fund balances. If there are no questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mrs. Kindig, York Adams Tax Bureau.
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Thank you. As far as the York County School of Technology report, I encourage all the board members to peruse the mini board report that is attached. And I would like to share that majority of the schools associated with the School of Technology did pass the budget, so their budget will be going forward. I'd like to recognize our visitors and thanks everyone for attending our meeting this evening. And that brings us to the final opportunity for public comment. Public comment period is an opportunity to be heard by the board on agenda items or other items which may reasonably come before the board. Comments are to be directed to the entire board, not one individual board member, administrator, staff member, or to the audience. Comments will be timed and limited to 3 minutes or less. Please Please note, board and staff members will not normally respond to comments or questions during the meeting. When you hear your name called, please come forward. You do not need to state your name or address before sharing your remarks. Danny Barker, Springettsbury Township. Hi, good evening, sir.
Good evening, ma'am. Now, you know, it's not like I'm the integrated policy expert, even though, you know, that has been conferred. But I had a question. It's not actually a question because I know you don't answer questions. So I guess you could think of it more along the terms of, I don't know, if I'm not wrong, which there's always that possibility, that you have a problem in 6.1 on your agenda tonight. That reads, as permitted by Section 707 of the Sunshine Act, the board met in executive session at 6:15 p.m. We can kind of stop there. Well, we'll go on just a little bit. On February 24th, 2025, to discuss student discipline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, if I have this understanding correct, the Sunshine Act is, in fact, Title 65 of the PA statutes. That's found on the government website. And then you referenced in your agenda 707 in direct connection to discussing student discipline. So it's not a large section. I'll just go ahead and read it to you real quick. And you can see for yourself whether student is mentioned there. Exceptions to open meetings. First one, executive sessions. An agency may hold an executive session under 708 related to executive sessions. Conference, under B, an agency is authorized to participate in a conference. Then blah, blah, blah. In Section C, certain working sessions. If you read all the words, nowhere is student discipline mentioned. Just thought I'd point it out because we are collecting a little data in the context of failure to organize. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you. Alana Bortolin, Springettsbury Township. She passes. Thank you. Mary Balivo, Springettsbury Township. Hi, good evening.
Good evening. At the last board meeting, it became even clearer that this board has been voting to spend money and to vote for building projects with money we don't have. It's obvious that the board has not been working within a budget through this entire process that we've been involved with, at least personally I've been involved with since last February. This board voted to spend $23 million on a new building project in '23, which the costs have gone up exponentially. They're voting now to pay an architect and others and $50 an hour for a lawyer to appeal the vote of the zoning board, which denied the variances they asked for, denied. Now you're spending more money, thousands and thousands and millions of dollars and above to appeal this. But at the last board meeting, it was interesting, one board member mentioned that the board needed to be more frugal, considering the financial situation in our country today and what is happening right now in our nation. The money is not there, and with all of the money that's being spent on things that are not needed. And when this comment was showed, when he said we need to be more frugal, this showed that you have not been frugal through this entire process, but reckless in your spending with money that we do not have. Yet this board, even after that was mentioned at this last board meeting about we need to be frugal, you went ahead and voted for a new swimming pool and to move forward with the new project at the high school. I know at previous board meetings, Mr. Robertson had mentioned what you do, you go to the state. They said the state has remember, you said the state had billions and billions of dollars, which they did not have. We found out that was money that was in a rainy day fund for the state. That was not an accurate statement, we found out. So we're in a new era now, and people are very much aware of reckless spending. And I ask you now to, as you did before, what I thought was an excellent idea, one of the teachers came forward and said, thank the board, to stop and dig in, take a deep dive and reevaluate. Remember, she mentioned your mathematical program, which I thought was good. You stop and do a good evaluation. So I'm asking you to do the same thing now. Stop, as you did for your educational math program. Take a deep dive, reevaluate, and stop spending our money that you don't have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Hawkins, Spring Garden Township. Hi, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm responding to comments that were made at the February 24th meeting, criticizing Director Sanders for questioning costs and expenses of Crabtree. While the person commenting may be a national building expert, most of us, like James Sanders, are not building experts. We want to know why costs are high, and you board members are the only conduit we have to find out. Therefore, it's in the best interest of us, the taxpayers, to understand what our tax dollars are being spent on. And it's the fiduciary duty of the school board to question expenses. In particular, sums being paid to Crabtree and set to be paid if projects go forward. If you engage an architect or a specialized business trade company for work on your home, wouldn't you question what they're doing and how much it costs? What those costs are for? Are they reasonable? Can you afford it? So please, all of you on the school board, ask questions, demand explanations, and importantly, demonstrate transparency to all of us who are footing the bill. And to Director Sanders, thank you for questioning Crabtree and other businesses engaged in work on our schools. We appreciate hearing about what the costs are and why they're so high. Finally, I continue to ask, please explore less costly solutions to buildings and projects. We are in favor of supporting the education of district students, but the bare fact is we're worried. We're worried we'll be taxed out of the district, taxed out of our homes and communities we know and care about, and that's really what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Reinecker, Spring Garden Township. Good evening.
Good evening. I am the chairman of Citizens for York Suburban School District, whose mission is to endorse thoughtful, smart, dedicated, and kind school board members who care deeply about children and the future of public education. At the January 28th school board meeting, my comments focused on the fact that the district's infrastructure improvement project is a process. While following a process seems obvious for any large organization contemplating strategic change, it seems that Teachers Not Buildings has committed to a process with a theme of communicating attacks and blame, the polar opposite of collaboration that can positively move the district forward. This group is led by Concern YS Residents Political Action Committee Chairman Joel Sears and Treasurer Robert Sanders, listed at the same address as James Sanders' mother, Chris Sanders. They are endorsing candidates James Sanders, Chris Sanders, Mike Park, and Andy Ruth. Since February 2024, the group has demanded that the process of improving buildings be their process, by meeting their demands, their timelines, and their ideas. James Sanders' mother, who is also his running mate, recently even provided advice to YS teachers via the notable Shane the Trains podcast. What then could this group's motivation be, as they don't seem to be focused on being teacher allies, but instead suggesting to them how to teach? I'm not sure, but let our community contemplate these facts that we do know. James Sanders is the solicitor of Spring-Its-Berry Township. James Sanders also sits on the York Suburban School Board. Mike Park, James Sanders' running mate, threatened the school district during the February 24th, 2024 school board meeting public comment that their group would, quote, contact Spring-Its-Berry Township and, quote, use hearings available to us to slow down a groundbreaking. At the two Spring-Its-Berry Township meetings in October and November, while hearing the district's parking variance, individual YS residents Louise Soskin and attorney Dan Barker were represented by a local attorney arguing their case, asking to deny the district's zoning variance application. On January 31st, I pulled their PAC's campaign finance report. On it, to expenditures for, quote, legal fees, totaling almost $10,000 to Barley Snyder, the same law firm that represented the two individual citizens stated above to fight the district's variance application. There was also an expenditure of $5,000 of in-kind by Mark Park for legal fees. So the question is, has a political action committee that has endorsed a sitting school board member, James Sanders, and his running mates paid the legal fees to represent two individual citizens fighting to deny the district case? Thank you so
that's
much.
fine. Thank you. Chris Sanders, Spring-Its-Berry Township. Hi, good evening.
Well, thank you, Sarah Reinecker. You just laid out what your mission is all about. And that, once again, is to personally attack everyone that she doesn't like. Now, I think a member of the school board would like to be more about what's happening in the schools, not personally attacking. But now we know there's a clear difference between what her campaign is like, which is personally attacking everyone, and what our campaign would be like, which is let's get this school going again. So residents of the district have a very different choice to make. Now, how are we going to teach these kids to be critical thinkers? How? We want discipline. We want safety for these kids. We have resource officers that sat here tonight, and all we could talk about was, well, give us a good story about one child. We want that resource officer to make sure that our schools are safe. No one asked that question. How are you going to make our schools safe? We have Crabtree Rohrbaugh come to the table. He does a nice little job of telling us all about things, but nobody except Director Sanders questions him, because this board rubber stamps everything. There's no critical thinking going on here. It's everybody staying in their lane, as Mrs. Schroeder always says. I trust. No, you don't trust. You trust but verify. It's our money. It's these kids at stake. We want our campaign will get these kids headed in the right direction. We will get them back to learning. Our resource officer will be one that takes charge. He's the boss in that area. This book banning thing that, once again, good old Sarah Reinecker is going to stir all that up, but we have an excellent policy at this school already. So we're not going to go for that. AI, that is so extremely important. We had very few questions on that. That could change everything in this school. That is something that needs to be thought about very, very carefully, because once these kids get a hold of it, it could be a wonderful thing, but it could be a horrible thing too. And this board is charged with making those rules and regulations. Our group has a platform that talks about the schools, not about personal attacks.
Thank you, that's time. Thank you. Kathy Schaefer, Spring Garden Township. Yikes. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. First of all, I'm just sort of wondering which agenda item in the first public comment item, which agenda item exactly was Mrs. Sanders commenting in reference to? I'd like to ask for your consideration about the new agenda with respect to, darn, I left it back there, the consent agenda. I'm wondering if the consent agenda, if the two different meetings, the planning meeting was my understanding, or used to be the understanding, that was the deliberation and the discussion meeting, and the regular meeting was the voting meeting. So I'm wondering if the consent agenda is at some point going to roll into the regular meeting as opposed to the planning meeting. Okay, what else? Okay, so for those of us who grew up in the Cold War era, you may recall, for those of you who did that, duck and cover drills in schools. We hid under our desks and covered our heads with our arms in the event of a nuclear explosion. And fortunately, we never had to find out how truly ineffective this technique was. Today, students in this country regularly have active shooter drills. Sadly, we are familiar with the many horrific outcomes from these very real events. Please let's not lose sight of the value in enhanced safety and security designs that would be included in a new building and building renovations. I'll also mention that as I listened to the comments previous to this, there's a fine line between there's not a fine line between micromanaging and rubber stamping, and I would say the opposite. I would say there are times when at least one board member of this board is micromanaging. Lastly, at the February 10th board meeting, Chris Sanders stated that her son was absent from the meeting because he was sick when the vote was being taken for the new renovations at the high school and the pool. But yet, at the February 24th meeting, Mr. Sanders stated that he was absent because he was working. Go figure.
Thank you. That brings us to any board comments or recognitions. Anything from anybody around the table? Okay, hearing none, we can adjourn. Thanks, everybody.